The ruthless foundation. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Niccolo Machiavelli. Look around carefully. Who do you surround yourself with? Are they allies or competitors waiting for a slip? Are they loyal or simply loyal to what you provide? This is the brutal truth. People will always serve their own interests first. And if you depend too heavily on them, your life is already in their hands. Machiavelli knew this better than anyone. To him, dependence was death. Dependence meant your fate could be decided not by your will, but by someone else's weakness. And the untouchable cannot afford that. Shock on dependence. The silent executioner considered Cesare Borgia, the infamous duke whom Machiavelli admired. Cesare had brilliance, armies, and charisma. He carved out power ruthlessly across Italy, yet his empire collapsed the moment his father, Pope Alexander VI, died. Cesare's brilliance didn't save him, his dependence destroyed him. Centuries later, the same law played out again. Stalin, surrounded by allies during the rise of Soviet power, slowly turned on each of them. Why? Because he knew reliance on others was poison. Friends became rivals, rivals became enemies. And he cut them down until only fear bound his circle together. This is the hidden law. Dependence makes you touchable. It creates a lever that others can pull at will. The modern trap. You might think you're safe because you're not a duke or dictator, but look at your life. At work, do you rely on a single boss's approval to advance? That leash can strangle you overnight. In relationships, do you cling to someone out of fear of being alone? That fear makes you bend where you should stand tall. Online, do you build your identity entirely on an algorithm? One update, and you vanish into irrelevance. Dependency is everywhere, and every dependency is a vulnerability. The ruthless shift. To begin walking the Machiavellian path, you must shift ruthlessly. Stop asking to be accepted. Start becoming impossible to ignore. Weak men beg for approval. Strong men create conditions where approval doesn't matter. Weak women beg for affection. Strong women cultivate such presence that affection follows them regardless. Machiavelli's infamous line comes alive here. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Why? Because love is fickle. Fear endures. Approval evaporates. Respect remains. Your first weapon is discomfort. Comfort is what chains you. Every time you seek comfort over growth, you tighten your own shackles. Every time you endure discomfort, you sharpen your edge. The crucible of discomfort. Think of a blacksmith forging a blade. The metal is useless until it is beaten, burned, and cooled. So it is with you. Your independence will be forged in moments where you would rather bend. The entrepreneur who fires a childhood friend because the business demands it. Painful, yes, but necessary. The soldier who leaves family behind for the campaign. Cruel, perhaps. But survival requires it. The leader who enforces discipline when others want indulgence. Cold, but effective. Weakness whispers, stay safe. Strength answers, I would rather bleed now than bow later. Ask yourself this now. If everything you depend on vanished tomorrow, your job, your partner, your friends, would you still stand? Or would you collapse into dust? That answer reveals whether you are on the path of power or still chained by invisible leashes. The untouchable do not collapse. They adapt, they rebuild, because their foundation is internal, not external. Machiavelli was merciless, but he was honest. No one is coming to save you, and if you're wise, you wouldn't want them to. The only true safety is to be dangerous enough that no one dares cage you. Historical shock. Consider this. When Napoleon crowned himself emperor, he did not let the Pope place the crown on his head. Why? Because even that symbolic dependence was intolerable. By crowning himself, he declared, "I take power, I do not receive it." That gesture echoed across history because it was more than theater. It was a declaration of untouchability. So I leave you with a dark question. Would you rather be loved today and discarded tomorrow, or feared and respected for life? Most choose the first without realizing it. But the few who dare to choose the second, they step onto the ruthless path of becoming untouchable. Masks, silence, and emotional control. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see, but few can feel. Niccolo Machiavelli. If dependence is the first chain you must break, the second step toward becoming untouchable is mastering concealment. You cannot allow the world to see your raw emotions, your desperate hungers, or your unguarded weaknesses. Power is not simply about what you do, it's about what you show. Most people make the fatal mistake of living like open books. They vent every frustration, broadcast their insecurities, and expose their ambitions prematurely. In doing so, they hand the keys of their psychology to anyone willing to use them. If I know what angers you, I can provoke you. If I know what flatters you, I can seduce you. If I know what you fear, I can paralyze you. Machiavelli's insight was merciless. Predictable people are controllable people. The mask as armor. Think of the mask not as deception, but as armor. The ruler who reveals doubt will be abandoned. The general who shows fear will be deserted. The lover who bleeds too much emotion will be taken for granted. The untouchable learn to wear masks, not to lie, but to protect. One mask may radiate calm confidence in chaos. Another may project humility when facing superiors. Another may display charm while concealing indifference. Like a master swordsman carrying multiple blades, you must choose the right mask for each duel. Machiavelli compared rulers to the lion and the fox. The lion reveals strength but falls into traps. The fox conceals cunning but lacks force. Combine them and you are both mask and muscle, unreadable and unstoppable. The power of silence. If masks are your armor, silence is your dagger. Few weapons cut deeper. In negotiation, silence forces the other side to reveal their desperation. In arguments, silence denies enemies the satisfaction of reaction. In relationships, silence shifts the power dynamic, making your absence louder than words. Try this in practice. The next time someone provokes you, resist the urge to react. Hold silence. Watch how it unsettles them. The void you create forces others to fill it with their anxieties, their rationalizations, their weakness. As Machiavelli would say, noise is for the masses, restraint is for the powerful. Emotional sovereignty. Yet masks and silence are nothing without emotional control. This is the core of untouchability. Sovereignty over your inner kingdom. Most people are puppets to their emotions. A sharp word makes them lash out. A compliment makes them melt. Their reactions are as predictable as a puppet dancing to strings. The untouchable, however, cultivate an iron calm. They feel anger, but do not display it. They sense fear, but walk forward regardless. They receive praise, but remain unmoved. Their emotions exist, but they are caged, disciplined, and released only when strategically useful. Imagine two generals before battle. One paces nervously, ranting, sweating. The other stands still, calm, unshaken. Who do the soldiers follow? Not the loud, but the composed. In chaos, composure is command. History's silent masters. Julius Caesar was notorious for his restraint. When insulted publicly, he often smiled rather than retaliating. His silence unnerved rivals more than anger ever could. They could not read him, and that mystery made him dangerous. Centuries later, Steve Jobs wielded silence like a weapon at Apple. In meetings, he would let others talk themselves into corners while he remained wordless. When he finally spoke, his measured words carried 10 times the weight. Silence was not weakness. It was theater, positioning him as the gravitational center of the room. Modern chessboard applications. Business. The executive who reveals desperation loses leverage. The untouchable executive remains calm, signaling that walking away costs them nothing. That silence bends negotiations. Politics. The candidate who reacts to every attack burns out. The untouchable one reframes, smiles, and starves their enemies of the outrage they crave. Relationships. The partner who reacts to every mood swing becomes controlled. The untouchable one maintains steady boundaries, showing that silence itself can correct imbalance. If these principles of masks, silence, and emotional control are striking a chord, pause for a moment. Subscribe to Ruthless Psychology now, because the deeper we go, the darker it gets, and Part 3 will take us into pain, betrayal, and necessary loss. If you're not ready for that, stop here. But if you are, join this community of those who dare to see the world as it truly is. The shield of the untouchable. Do not mistake this discipline for coldness. The untouchable are not lifeless statues. They simply decide what deserves their energy. Anger is a weapon, not a reflex. Affection is a choice, not a dependency. Words are arrows, not leaks of emotion. Ask yourself, could someone today predict your reaction under pressure? If so, you are still touchable. The untouchable cultivate unreadability. Their silence, their mask, their calm. These make them dangerous. So, here is your next ruthless question. Do you control your face, your silence, your emotions? Or do they control you? Because until you master concealment, you will always be someone else's pawn, and pawns are expendable. Pain, detachment, and strategic loss. It is a common defect in men not to reckon on storms in fair weather. Niccolo Machiavelli. If masks and silence protect you from daily attacks, pain and detachment forge you into something indestructible. To become untouchable, you must not only endure pain, you must weaponize it. You must not only detach from weakness, you must cut ties so ruthlessly that others fear ever being the rope that drags you down. Pain, the furnace of power. Most people treat pain as a curse to avoid, but pain is the forge of transformation. Think of iron in a blacksmith's fire, beaten, burned, reshaped. Without that brutal process, the metal remains useless. Without deliberate pain, you remain weak. Machiavelli knew this. He observed rulers who refused to act decisively because the act was painful. Firing allies, punishing betrayal, abandoning failing policies. Their mercy led to their downfall. Pain is not the enemy. Comfort is. Every great leader in history chose pain. Alexander marched his armies through deserts. Churchill endured bombardment and loss before victory. Entrepreneurs abandoned safe salaries, bleeding for years before success. The path to power is paved with scars. Detachment. Walking away without fear dependency makes you vulnerable. Detachment makes you sovereign. To detach is not to stop caring. It is to stop clinging. The investor who cuts losses before ruin. The lover who walks away when respect dies. The leader who fires incompetence despite family ties. Each act is painful, but detachment signals strength. It says, I choose myself over dependence. Machiavelli himself praised rulers who acted boldly without trembling over outcomes. That boldness is born of detachment, the refusal to let fear of loss paralyze you. The strategy of cutting ties. The untouchable treat loss as strategy. They do not cling to failing battles. They cut ties like surgeons cut rot from flesh. Consider Julius Caesar. When facing mutiny in his ranks, he executed not enemies, but his own soldiers to send a message. It was ruthless, but it saved his army from collapse. Or look at Steve Jobs when he returned to Apple in 1997. He cut entire product lines, fired loyal employees, and endured vicious criticism. Yet those brutal decisions resurrected Apple from near death into the empire it became. Comfort would have killed the company. Detachment saved it. The lesson is brutal but clear. You cannot carry everyone with you. And when you refuse to cut, you invite collapse. Ron's betrayal, the ultimate teacher. Nothing teaches detachment like betrayal. Machiavelli warned, trust must always be conditional. Friends turn rivals. Allies switch sides. Lovers cool. The weak collapse into bitterness. The untouchable absorb betrayal like iron absorbs heat. They learn, they sharpen, they harden. Each betrayal exposes where they depended too much, where they ignored red flags, where they let sentiment blind strategy. Every dagger in your back can be turned into armor if you refuse to crumble. Modern parallels. Business. A CEO who clings to underperforming relatives drains the company. The one who replaces them, however painful, saves the empire. Politics. A candidate who refuses to distance themselves from scandal sinks. The one who cuts ties, ruthlessly and fast, survives. Relationships. The partner who begs to stay loses dignity. The one who walks away with silence reclaims power and often forces respect from the very one who betrayed them. Detachment is not cruelty. It is self-preservation. The transformation through pain. Every step toward becoming untouchable involves pain, shedding old identities, abandoning illusions, enduring rejection, but each scar becomes a medal, each sacrifice becomes a shield. The snake sheds its skin. The phoenix burns before it rises. You must let old versions of yourself die if you are to evolve. Ask yourself, what are you still unwilling to lose? Because whatever you cling to desperately, job, partner, reputation, that is exactly where you are most vulnerable. If this ruthless truth is shaking you, don't look away. Subscribe now to Ruthless Psychology, because Part 4 will reveal the most dangerous weapon of all. Not pain, not masks, but the ability to engineer perception itself. If you think you're ready for that, stay with me. Historical shock. Consider Hernán Cortés landing in the New World. He ordered his men to burn their ships. There would be no retreat, no safety, no dependence, victory or death. That single act of ruthless detachment forced his men to fight with desperation that conquered empires. The same principle applies to you. Until you burn your ships, you will never fight with the fury required to win. So, here is your challenge. What is the ship you refuse to burn? Because as long as it waits in the harbor, you are not free. You are still touchable. The untouchable do not cling. They cut. They burn. And in that fire, they are reborn. Perception, presence, and ruthless positioning. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few really know what you are. Niccolo Machiavelli power is not just about reality. It is about appearance. The untouchable understand this law. Perception is reality. No matter how strong or brilliant you are, if the world perceives you as weak, you are weak. If they perceive you as inevitable, you are inevitable. Why perception outweighs truth. Machiavelli was ruthless on this point. He argued that rulers must concern themselves more with appearances than with ideals. Why? Because people cannot see your motives or your private battles. They only see what you project, your composure, your words, your aura. The untouchable never leave that projection to chance. They craft it, they engineer it, they shape perception until others believe in their invincibility. Once perception is set, reality bends around it. History is full of rulers who survived not because they were flawless, but because they appeared flawless long enough to consolidate real power. The aura of presence. Presence is invisible gravity. Walk into a room and either people notice you or they don't. The untouchable are noticed before they speak. Their presence commands respect. How? Through discipline. 1. Stillness. Restless movement screams insecurity. Stillness radiates command. 2. Pace. Speaking slowly makes words sink like stones in water. 3. Silence. Strategic pauses make people lean in. 4. Eye contact. Not frantic, not aggressive, steady, piercing, controlled. Think of the throne room. The king does not rush to speak. The general does not explain nervously. The untouchable know the fewer movements you make, the heavier each one becomes. The chessboard of positioning life is a chessboard. Most people play reactively, moving pawns because others moved first. The untouchable Think 5 moves ahead. Machiavelli advised rulers to position themselves so they could not be easily attacked. Today, this means anticipating power shifts and placing yourself where advantage flows naturally toward you. The employee who leaves a dying firm for a rising competitor positions himself as inevitable. The politician who allies early with a winning faction positions herself before the tide turns. The creator who diversifies platforms positions himself beyond the reach of one algorithm. Positioning is foresight. It is the art of standing where no strike can reach you. Information asymmetry, the invisible weapon. One Machiavellian tactic is information asymmetry. The untouchable know more than they reveal. They study, they observe, they gather intelligence, but share almost nothing. When people realize you are always prepared yet impossible to read, they project strength onto you. Mystery is power. Unreadability is fear. The scarcity principle. Another tactic, engineered scarcity. The more available you are, the less you are valued. The untouchable make their presence rare. Their time, their attention, even their words are treated as costly commodities. Napoleon was a master of scarcity. He limited his public appearances, so each one became electrifying. Crowds hung on every gesture. Scarcity magnified his aura until he seemed larger than life. In the modern world, the same law applies. If everyone can reach you anytime, your value plummets. If access must be earned, you are elevated. Historical shock. Consider Louis XIII, the Sun King of France. He mastered perception so completely that nobles ruined themselves financially just to watch him eat breakfast at Versailles. Why? Because his image, crafted with theater, ritual, and scarcity, made him appear divine. In reality, he was just a man, but perception made him untouchable. Modern parallels. Politics. Candidates with a consistent, simple image, even exaggerated, dominate. The perception of strength outweighs messy reality. Business, CEOs who project inevitability, calm investors during chaos. Their aura of control is more valuable than actual stability. Relationships. The partner who maintains mystery and boundaries becomes magnetic. The one who overshares becomes disposable. If this ruthless law of perception is opening your eyes, don't just watch, join. Subscribe to Ruthless Psychology right now. Because Part 5 is the final code, how to transcend approval itself and step into the aura of inevitability. If you think this is dark, the next part is darker. Stay with me. The ruthless lesson. The weak cry out, but isn't this manipulation? Yes, and life itself is manipulation. Politicians manipulate with promises, lovers manipulate with affection, corporations manipulate with ads. The difference is that the untouchable manipulate consciously, strategically, and without apology. To be untouchable, you must not only act with strength, you must appear untouchable until perception hardens into reality. So, here is your challenge. Are you engineering your perception, or are you letting others define your story? Because until you control the image, you remain vulnerable to the whispers of others. The untouchable know, it doesn't matter who you are, it matters who they believe you to be. The final code, becoming untouchable. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Niccolo Machiavelli. Every strategy we have built so far, breaking dependence, wearing masks, wielding silence, embracing pain, engineering perception, culminates in one ruthless truth. To be truly untouchable, you must transcend the addiction to approval. Love fades. Applause fades. Validation fades. If your identity rises and falls on the praise of others, you will always remain touchable. The final code is liberation from this leash. The softest chain, approval. Approval is the sweetest poison. People crave it like addicts. They contort their lives to gain it. They silence their ambition to keep it. And the tragedy is this: those who live by approval die by rejection. Machiavelli warned that rulers who tried to please everyone ended up pleasing no one. In your life, the same law applies. The colleague desperate for everyone's friendship becomes a pawn. The partner who constantly seeks reassurance becomes unattractive. The leader obsessed with applause becomes a slave to the crowd. The untouchable break this chain. The aura of inevitability. The secret weapon of the untouchable is not approval, but inevitability. They project an aura that says, whether you love me or hate me, I will remain. History proves this. Think of Margaret Thatcher, called the Iron Lady. She was not universally loved. She didn't care. She projected inevitability so strongly that even her enemies respected her. Or Elon Musk. He is mocked, adored, vilified, worshipped, but he projects inevitability that his vision will manifest regardless of opinion. People follow not because they love him, but because they sense he cannot be stopped. The untouchable don't beg for permission. They radiate inevitability until the world bends. Mistakes without collapse. Here's another mark of the untouchable. Mistakes don't shatter them. Everyone fails, everyone stumbles, but weak people collapse under criticism. They over-explain, they beg forgiveness, they drown in shame. The untouchable absorb the blow, adjust, and continue. They acknowledge errors, but never crumble. Opponents expect apology. Instead, they seek composure. Over time, the world forgets the failure, but remembers the resilience. This is the paradox. The untouchable are not flawless. They are relentless. Modern mirrors. Politics, Leaders who outlast scandals often do so not by innocence, but by endurance. Their aura of inevitability outlives their enemies' outrage. Business. Entrepreneurs who rise from bankruptcy to build again become legends, while others vanish. Failure, endured, becomes myth. Relationships. The partner who calmly walks away when disrespected is remembered long after the one who begged to stay. Untouchable power is not immunity to loss. It is the refusal to be defined by it. Beyond fear and love. Machiavelli's famous line, "It is better to be feared than loved," is not about cruelty. It is about priority. Love is fragile. Fear is lasting, but the highest state is beyond both. The untouchable transcend fear and love alike. They are respected because they are unbendable. They cannot be bribed by affection nor broken by hatred. They stand sovereign beyond reach. If you followed this far, you're different. Most clicked away at comfort. You stayed through silence, pain, and perception. That makes you part of a rare few. So, join fully, subscribe to Ruthless Psychology, and step deeper into this brotherhood of the untouchable. Comment below. I choose sovereignty. Prove you are not just a spectator, but a player. The Brotherhood of the Untouchable. This channel is not entertainment. It is initiation. It is for those willing to confront the truths most deny. That people manipulate daily. That power is never fair. That survival belongs to the ruthless. If you walk this path, you are not alone. History's greatest minds, from Machiavelli to Borgia, from Napoleon to Thatcher, all wrestled with these same laws, and they rose because they dared to see clearly. Now, it is your turn. Ask yourself, if tomorrow you lost your job, your partner, your reputation, would you still stand? If the answer is no, then you are still touchable. But if the answer is yes, if you could face ruin and still walk forward, then you are already on the path. The world bends for those who cannot be bent. Becoming untouchable is not about cruelty for its own sake. It is about sovereignty. It is about freedom. It is about becoming so centered, so unreadable, so unbreakable that nothing external can control you. That is the final code. Once you live it, you no longer chase power. Power chases you.